Before we get started with the show, I just wanted to remind you that if you need help with your letter of intent, go to residencyhelp.com to look at the information there, and then let me know that you'd want to work with me one-on-one at tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. That's tonythepharmacist@gmail.com. All right, let's get started with the show. Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I wanted to talk about something that we maybe never talk about, which is birth order and residency choice. Because I have triplets, you would think, okay, well, they're all the same. That's really not something that applies. And it's actually quite the opposite, where they really respond to their birth order, even though their birth order was minutes apart. And I can't tell you how much their personalities are kind of associated with that type of birth order. Okay, so I know they're 8 years old, or going to be 9 years old here in July, but their birth order really matters in terms of how they would do things. And for whatever reason, I don't necessarily know that as people we really change that much from when we were kids to now, and how we react to many things later. So it may seem crazy, but I want to talk about the difference between a residency that has one position or a very solitary position, like you're the only resident at a site, versus one that has multiple positions, and a lot of what you do depends on working with others. So I'm going to start with my firstborn, Rianne, and although she was only born a couple of minutes before the other ones, she was so eager to be born that she tried to get out at 19 weeks, and that was almost tragic for us. So we would have lost them all. But the doctor carefully put her back in, cerclage procedure later, and then I want to say 55 days of hospital bed rest, and at the 27th week in 3 days, she was born just before the other two. And we'll take something as simple as riding a bike. It drives her absolutely crazy to have anyone riding in front of her. And in this quarantine time, my daughters and I will go ride bikes. We'll go up to like Orange Leaf, which is 1 mile, 2 miles away. But even riding next to me, she has to be like a little bit ahead of me. She just feels so uncomfortable in a following position. And this is just her nature. I'm not going to try to change that. And she's pretty good at a lot of things. She's good in the classroom, good at gymnastics, good at soccer, and I'm not saying the others aren't, but she definitely has that drive and need to be very good at things. And the one thing she's not very good at is prioritizing the needs of the ball. So what I mean by that is in soccer, you're not supposed to prioritize the needs of the person and what that person is going to do. You're supposed to prioritize the needs of the ball. So it would be best if the ball went to someone else, then she should pass it to someone else. But that is really not in her nature. It's more likely that she's going to try to get past two defenders over passing, especially if it's her sister. And that's just who she is. I obviously want her to pass, but I know that she really, really is going to work hard to make sure that she can be a leader in some way on that team. So when you're looking at these kind of one resident sites, you really have to be well-rounded, because when someone is hiring one person, that person kind of has to be a superstar in every category, because they're expecting what I would call a unicorn resident, in that, okay, well, you have to be great in clinical and research and teaching and all of these things. And what happens is regardless of this, if this is a top program, a mid-tier program, or maybe a newer program that has never had a resident before, they're all going to look for the same thing, because they're looking for one person, and that one person has to check so many boxes. So while you think, okay, well, superstars only for the one residency or one resident site, but what'll actually happen is they're going to overlook a lot of good residents, because they're trying to make sure they don't make any large mistake in one category. And so if you aren't, superstar national whatever in all 5 categories, I still think you would be able to apply. It's just, would you want that expectation? And I have not done a survey of residencies across the country and asked, hey, I was just wondering, are most of your one resident sites, are they mostly firstborn children? And I don't know if that would be the case, but I certainly know that there is going to be a drive to be autonomous and a comfort with being autonomous. And there really is one person that you especially have to get along with, which is the current resident, because the current resident is going to expect you to be like them. I'm not talking about race or even gender, anything like that. I'm just saying you would both get along because you would both be so independent working and so comfortable working independently and so comfortable having it all laid on you. The next type of residency, the residency that has more than one person, I would call the physician assistant pharmacy residency. And that is because the PA inherently in that degree is a team player. A physician assistant, by its very nature, is someone who works with other people and works with the physician and so forth. Now, I'm going to go back to my kids. Tegan is a much more offensively minded kid, and although she doesn't need to take the ball in the way that the firstborn does, she can absolutely crush it. We were just had jaw dropped. She kicked a goal from midfield, and we were just like, what just happened? And it was because the ball was coming towards her so fast, and she attacked it so hard that the rebound was like a 100-mile-an-hour pitch coming in, and then the bat sending it right back out, and just absolutely crushed the ball. But someone had to pass it to her, or someone had to send it to her. And she works really well in a team environment where when she's open and you know that that's her talent and that's what she can do, she will absolutely crush it. And then when it's time to be back on defense, she will absolutely hustle and make sure that she's doing the very best for the team. The same with Brielle. Brielle is an absolute defending machine, and she's like flypaper. She will not let you by. We play 7-on-7, so 7 on one half the field, 7 on the other. With the goalie and Brielle as a defender, we can allow the other 5 to play up front because there is no one that will get past her one-on-one. It's just not possible. You're just like, oh my gosh, this person's gonna juke her, and she just is not. She's just so focused on that person's hips, know exactly where the person is going, but you can't win a game just being a really great one-on-one defender. You have to be able to get that ball out, and you have to get support once you've done your job and stopped that initial rush. And then, of course, 2-on-1, you're going to need somebody else to work with you. So both of them work really well within the team. So when you see something with the 2 or more residents, they're going to be expecting you to be working within the team, but they're also going to be expecting you to be a superstar in a single category. So let's just, for example, pretend there's going to be 5 residents at whatever site we're talking about. And there is just a clinical star. They've were published and all of these things, and you can just tell, like, wow, they go up to the patient, everything is amazing. And then you've got somebody that actually has a higher degree, has done research, maybe bench research, PhD or something like that. And then you see somebody who has been doing tutoring with Rokai and mentoring and all of that. And then you see somebody that started their own volunteer program for a food bank or something. And what you're seeing is a team coming together. And so what I would look for in those multiple groups is, yes, you're going to have leadership and clinical skills and all of those things. But when you are hiring multiple people, you can't help but try to fit talents together. So when you ask, and it's very good information when you find out about other people that applied, you can say, you know what, as you were looking at some of the people that have already come by, what were really some of the strengths that you saw, and what were some places where maybe you're like, gosh, we really wish we had a resident that had excellent research experience to help the other residents, or we really wish we had a clinical person that was really, really just into this particular subject. as you're looking at those two or mores, you're thinking like a teammate. And by thinking as a teammate, you're also going to be very likable to these groups. So where you've got the one resident and you're talking to that one person is like, yeah, I'm fine having to take on everything, and you two bond over that. In this case, somebody saying that would be, wow, you really don't want to work with other people or things like that. So when you're applying, I'm not saying birth order is always the case like this, but a lot of times it's a lot easier to think of birth order in this way, where the firstborn has to be the leader, the middle child has their own, and then sometimes the last born, if you've got three, has to prove themselves in some way or another. And I think that if you kind of think of it in those soccer terms, where you're like, okay, so there's going to be the superstar, but it's going to be someone who we know is probably going to lose the ball a bunch of times because they're going to go into this kind of scrum, and you can just follow up. You can just have two people, one on the left, one on the right, just trailing them. Where if I were to have somebody who's more pass happy, I would put those two forward of them and say, okay, well, let's open up some lanes and get in those seams. So it's not trying to change the person. It's trying to make sure that the environment that you're going into is an environment where you naturally fit. Again, it's the match, and what we're trying to do is match what your birth order personality would be and match it to a site that has probably the residency situation that you want. So again, the firstborn, maybe that one resident site is one of the places where, you're going to feel very at home because it's all on you, and that's a comfort place for you. Whereas if you're somebody that really, really likes to be around other people, maybe you're second or thirdborn, that would be something that works really well for you. And what I did was kind of a hybrid, which is I'm firstborn, so I was the only person at my site, but I was within a system that had multiple residents across multiple sites. And that's kind of up to you. So again, I'm helping people with letters of intent. I'm going to start creating a class. And then right now, if you want to work with me to get your letter of intent done, I'll be giving free access to those that join up in this early time. And then as we kind of go on, I'll make them separate where you can sign up for the class or then without my help if you don't want my help, or if you do want my help. So again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. I do encourage you to go to residencyhelp.com, get on the mailing list. I'll send you out an email every Friday during residency season, but then afterwards, I'll still have a number of episodes on helping you get through residency itself. And then if you're somebody that's looking at residency in the future, I'll also have content for that as well. If you have a question, I'm pretty good about getting back to you. And if I don't have an answer, I will know someone that does. So thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please do rate and review. It really matters in terms of our ability to reach more people. Thanks again.